U.S. attorneys. Maxine Waters actually brought this up in a hearing no more than about 6 or 8 months ago and said something about the dead U.S. attorneys and Tom Flacco's story. Okay? Read those stories. It's very important. It gives you details. But they murdered Kennedy Jr. because he was going to run, and he was getting ready to publicize in George magazine just before his death. He was going to publicize the stories and the details about the murder of his father, which he had the evidence. And he was going to put it in, and it killed him, his wife, his sister-in-law, and his wife was pregnant. So there's 4 murders that Hillary Clinton, George W. Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush were involved with. And those people, there is no statute of limitations on murder, and they have been indicted in a New Jersey grand jury that I'm aware of that was a criminal referral done, and those indictments are under seal to this day.
So there was a grand jury indictment, and would the people that you just named were listed as the people responsible in that indictment?
Yes, those and Micah Hariri of the Israeli Mossad, who's been involved in everything from Iran-Contra to everything else, that answers to some nutcase general that I forgot his name, that trying to think of it. It runs meth labs out of Ohio and Colorado and other places here in the United States, and provides money to spy on Americans and so forth from those operations of drugs.
Well, it's something, because a lot of this, would you say a lot of this smuggling of drugs and all this money is the money that really goes unnoticed? It's not reported, obviously. So this is free flow money for these people to commit their crimes.
Well, they took out let me tell you, when they had me imprisoned, in Denver, Colorado, and because of the exposure of Silverado Savings, of what I was involved with and others, and especially Pete Bruton and Time Magazine, there was so many I was the only really political prisoner at that detention center at the time, federal detention center, which I might add again, the charges were dismissed after 10.5 months because they couldn't take me to trial because there was no evidence. There was no evidence. There wasn't any wrongdoing. Matter of fact, the phone calls after they tried to kill me are up on my internet site. If anybody goes to the left top column, scrolls down where it says Amanda Millman, my daughter, Amanda Webb. If they click on there, scroll down and listen to the conversation between Leonard Millman and myself, see if there's any death threats in there. All I ever did was said, I will expose you. I told him, he says, what do you want? I said, I want to see my daughter. That's all I want. And I'll quit exposing you. That's what they locked me up over. But the deal is, I'm losing track. It's getting late. I'm losing track of my thought here.
Well, we were talking about these criminals with the Kennedys. We were talking about people who are doing these drug smuggling.
The drug smuggling,
people don't understand when you've been out there. I just want to elaborate here for a second. People out there who are targets for as long as Stew has been, and as long as myself and some other people out there, there is a lot of stress associated with being a target. And these people who want to cover up these crimes know that people such as ourselves have a lot of damning information. So what they need to do is discredit people. They want to discredit people who are whistleblowers that have very critical information to put these criminals behind bars, some of which, who these criminals are extremely influential and have a lot of power. So when people get on radio or get on or write stories about this or have websites such as myself, it is very hard not to become affected by all the trauma that people are put under. So anyone out there that senses a lot of trauma in reference to these stories that we have on these radio shows, you can bet your sweet shoes that people are under a lot of trauma and a lot of stress when they talk about these subjects. So please keep that in mind. I want people to understand that.
You were talking about the drugs, Chris. I found, because I was locked up, what I was talking about, with all these different people that were being writted in, they called it, like subpoenaed in, but they were prisoners. They had been caught in various drug operations, money laundering. I mean, there were pilots, Iran-Contra pilots, finding all these drugs. The way they were paid was through Neil Bush, trading stock through Meyer Blinder, tied to AIG. They put the stock up for loans they never had to pay back. The artificial stock Milne was creating. I was told by them. I even got proof and evidence. There was over $12 trillion worth of narcotics, part of the Iran-Contra, Mena, Arkansas, the Clintons, my ex-in-laws, the Millmans, laundered through their savings and loans, Silverado of Denver, in a 9-year period of time. That's over $1 trillion each year was laundered just through that savings and loan. Then after that collapsed, it became Boulder Bank. Boulder Bank, they were laundering it through. Then Henry Gonzalez, I provided the information because I found out about it. It was laundered through Key Bank. It's been talked about. Everything that I'm talking about right now, most everything. Mm-hmm. Many of the things of the 1980s have been investigated by the United States government. Many of them you just got to know where the court case was, or you have to know, in specific, the court case. And many of it was talked about in many of the hearings under House banking, under HUD, Housing Urban Development hearings, various things. Many of these things were testified to, Iran-Contra hearings. And it was all covered up. The Alexander Committee hearings. And Bill Alexander had a crap load on Arkansas. And he was blackmailed and bribed. Not blackmailed, but cratered. They set him up under the Boulder Properties deal. Hillary Clinton did, and my ex-in-laws. And go in and look where it says blackmail congressmen and senators under the table of contents. Or it says Boulder Properties. Read the details. Al Martin was involved. And these were supposedly real estate investments that were set up and designed to crater congressmen, to blackmail them, those that they couldn't just take a paycheck in and pay them, or they couldn't set them up with kids, or they couldn't set them up, take pictures of them because they were faithful to their wives, so they weren't bending their secretaries over the desk where they could get pictures. Every congressional office and senatorial office, most of the courts in America, and if you go back to what's called the Catola Affidavit on my website, you will find it in there, either under the Catola Affidavit, CIA, or if you go down to the news pages, all those news pages, there's tons and tons, there's 5 of them, tons and tons of documents in there that have never been archived because I haven't had time to deal with it, because always investigating and digging and doing what I can to keep providing the information. But in there, they're talking about the Catola Affidavit, how George Herbert Walker Bush and others were involved in Operation Watchtower and various things. And this was a colonel that was assassinated. And I got my hands on this from a Pentagon source, that was quite aware of it. But they're talking about how they bugged all these U.S. attorneys, how they bugged state prosecutors and cambered their offices. This way they could get their picadillies on them, whether they had a drug habit, whether they were smoking a joint or liked cocaine, whether they were screwing around on their wives, affairs with their secretaries or whatever, or whether they were homosexuals or whatever. And then they took and created what they called red squads from those. And many of them were police chiefs across the nation and so forth, that then they could come back in later and say, listen, we want you to target so-and-so. Hey, we're not going to do that. It's illegal. Oh, well, here. And it set a picture down on the desk of him screwing his secretary, and all of a sudden, what is it you want? Oh, we want you to target Stew Webb. We want you to illegally arrest him a few times, cost him some money in attorney fees, try to get him locked up. Those kind of things happen. They call them red squads. And they got 50,000 of these bastards and bitches across the United States infiltrated in all the municipalities, the county-level positions, the state-level positions, as well as the FBI, the CIA, the DEA, and all the various agencies.